did talk to our board attorney, Dan Murphy, today, and he gave me some information as far as one of the questions was if we could, I mean, obviously, I think going to DACO right now for the first year is probably something we need to do because there's no way we can go out to bid in a timely manner and get a contract in by September 1st. You know, that process takes at least 90 days. But do we have the option after the first year of looking at other bus companies? And he said you need to look at the contract and see are there clauses in the contract that would look at termination and just cause for termination. So I got a copy of the contract, which I'd like to send him to have him review it, but I didn't see really anything, in the contract to say, because he had a couple questions. He wanted to know, if Nichols sells the contract to a third party, are there clauses in it for the board's protection or Nichols' protection as far as termination? And the only thing that I could find at all in the contract was basically on, and I don't have a copy for everybody. I'll read it.
I have it here if anybody wants.
Section 18.
It is section 18. Yeah. If you have a section 18, it's actually number H. It says contractor shall sublet, assign, transfer, convey, or otherwise dispose of this contract other than is herein specified. That would be the right for default. I'm not sure if that's the clause that we would use, but something that I think we'd have our board attorney look at to say, because there's, realistically, I was looking at the contract, there's really nothing else in the contract that would answer Dan's questions that he asked me today. And we spoke probably late this afternoon. By the time I was able to get a hold of him, it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock. And he said, send me the contract, I'll look it over, and I can give you better advice. But
Let's interrupt. I've sent it to Ken. I'll forward that email when I get home.
Okay.
Right to Dan.
okay,
That's right, yeah, because I thought they gave it to him, but it was the Ken,
It
wasn't
was
it?
a Ken.
With
So
Ken.
as soon as I get home, I'll send that.
Okay, because did you get any response? Because Dan was, obviously I don't think they spoke in the office because I spoke to Dan because no one else was around today, but did you get anything back from Ken, like the questions that Charlie, that Dan had?
No.
Okay. So I guess the question really for the board is that after this year, do we have the right to say, okay, if we're dissatisfied with the services from DATCO, do we have the right to go out to bid? And I guess that's what I need to know from our board attorney. We may, depending on this clause in the contract, but there's really not much here. There's really not much in the contract that talks about termination or transfers of services. What a lot of the contract has to do with if Nichols themselves defaults on services. If they don't provide the services or they rescind other services that they're providing or other issues that from their perspective that we could say they're defaulting on the contract. But there wasn't anything really specific about selling the contract except for that one clause.
Right, and my reading of it was, and what led me to that question was section 18, subsection H, which would allow us out if, when they sell, assign, transfer, convey the contract.
Right.
If my understanding would be that DATCO's gonna take over the contract, and they're gonna replace Nichols, which means all the other securities that are there stay in place.
Correct. That's
So the
basically
concern would just, my thought was just that if it gets to be October, November,
Mhm.
and we're just not happy with DATCO,
Right.
for no real particular reason
And we go out to bid. Right.
that's identified in the contract, does that, the fact that we didn't act on the default now,
Mhm.
do we waive basically our right to do that once we've accepted their,
For the duration of the
for
contract.
the next 2 years?
That's a good question.
That's
And that-
my
See, and
concern.
that I can ask Dan, because tomorrow I wanted to have the meeting and get some more information. Since you sent it to Ken, I could actually just tell Dan that to work with Ken as far as there are things that we would like to answer. And I think those are good questions because, who knows if we're going to be satisfied with that? And do we have the opportunity to go out and bid? Realistically, I think going out to bid now before September 1st when we know school opens is not possible. We're just not going to get, something in writing to say, okay, yeah, we're going to do this because the bid process legally takes a certain amount of time because you have to send notices out, you have to get them in. So you're looking at, and I don't know the time frame, but I know it's more than 30 days. But it does give us, we are looking to see, do we have an option to do that? And I think that's a good that's a good question.
Right, and that leads into, you know, there's nothing that I've seen or heard that initially gives me any pause that DATCO's not a viable option to use.
Mhm.
You know, quick Google search, I didn't turn up buses exploding or a litany of problems. So I don't have any problem with DATCO taking over the contract for the year. It's just that one
Mhm.
concern, if for whatever reason, you know, if DATCO does come in and all of a sudden starts firing all the bus drivers, or if we start switching buses,
Well,
which would technically they'd be in,
Right.
it wouldn't be a violation of the contract, depending on whatever, I don't know how it's gonna be written between Nichols and DATCO, but our contract, it wouldn't violate our contract.
Right.
So, but then it's the question of, do we wanna stay with this company, or move on to a different option?
okay. Those are the questions I can propose to Ken and to Dan. Okay. But I guess the question also for Dan would be is, the letter that we have from Charlie, specifying that there would be no significant changes, that all the bus drivers would be employed, that all the buses would be employed, they will honor the contract, as well as the employees. That also I need to send to Dan to say, is this in writing something that DATCO still has to follow, or do we need something from DATCO?
Oh yeah, Charlie's letter doesn't
So I think we need to have
hold
something.
DATCO to anything.
Right, so I think we need to have something from DATCO agreeing to the stipulations that are here.
Oh, sure, and it should, it should be something in the sale.
Okay.
If Charlie's selling the company over, there should be something in there that,
And I think that's
That's what we
something
do.
that we can ask, because I know Marie would like us, and you saw the letter that she gave us. Charlie would like a letter of agreement from the board, as you can see in one of the sentences. As per the contract, I would appreciate if you would send me a letter, a copy of the Board of Education's approval no later than July 25th, 2014. So I can actually, and I didn't want to wait, I didn't want to just do this on my own, I wanted to wait for the meeting, to say to Marie, we'd like in writing from DATCO the agreement that you stipulate
Oh,
in the
yeah.
letter before we send anything off to you. Okay.
absolutely, because I wanna be able to reference it in the letter,
Exactly.
per your DATCO's agreement to do this, this, and this.
Okay.
Um,
Assuming that our attorney, no due respect, would give us the language
Right.
that we should use.
I'm gonna ask him that, yeah.
Specifically to, because my experience when these things have happened before, and I've been through this with other things, they will have companies that will, and I noticed the language that he uses here is to retain his staff with the transition. Now the question becomes, I have seen with consolidations, there have been some people who have not been retained. And, or you may get 1 year. I've also had that, I get
think
1
that's-
year, they'll agree to give you 1 year, 14, 15, but after that, all bets are off, because that's when they get into consolidations and all of that sort of nonsense.
My feeling, Phil, is that this is a 1-year agreement for the transition. I would agree. I think that's probably the case. Then after next year, it really becomes DATCO's responsibility. Charlie and Marie are out of the picture.
Right.
And then if they decide to, I mean, the question for me, from our board attorneys from DATCO is, everything in the contract as far as the stipulation of the amount of buses, pricing, because we have the pricing guide, all those things would be stipulated that they need to continue to be in agreement if we're gonna stay with them. But then I think as far as services, as far as who they hire, who the, drivers are gonna be, probably might or may not be an issue that DATCO has the option. So I think they might have some options, but as far as the contract is concerned,
Right.
no.
Mhm.
I think that we need some guarantees from them, especially the amount of buses and the pricing.
Mhm.
And that's very well stipulated in the contract.
Right.
Well, yeah, but it sounds like it's two things. If they are agreeing to take the contract,
Right.
that's a 2-year contract.
Exactly.
And the conditions are set forth in the contract they'll have for the 2 years.
Exactly.
Now, as far as the transition with employees, and what have you there, that's a separate
Yep.
issue. I mean, they, after this year, could decide they wanna fire everybody and
Mhm.
start all over again, or whatever they wanna do, but they can do that for the 1 year, our contract would still be for the 2 years.
Correct.
Which is, then gets my first question of, is there the window to say, all right, well, we're not really happy with what you did dealing with the transition,
Mm-hmm.
so we're not gonna go out to bid for
Right.
the 2 years. And I don't wanna make sure we just waive that right.
If we
Just
don't,
accept, if we don't do it now.
right, okay. And I
Which,
hear
mean,
more,
as you said, we really
right.
not sure what we can do,
Right.
but still, we at least can put it in some sort of writing, at least in the letter to, that Charlie wants this letter, put in
some
that
stipulations.
to use accepting this now does not waive our right
Mm-hmm.
to default, based upon the right that the Charlie has sold it.
Okay.
No?